Okay, I think this is everybody that we are anticipating, so I will call this meeting to order, the Medina County Appraisal District's January 2023 meeting, and the agenda has been properly posted, and I think all of you have a copy of it. As I look around the room, I can establish a quorum. We are missing one director, being Mamie, so please have the minutes reflect that. We don't appear to have any public that wishes to be heard, so we'll move on from public comments. And the next agenda item is number 4, which would be the approval of the minutes from the November 8th, 2022 meeting. All of you were given a copy of that. So without us reading those, I'll just ask if any of you saw any corrections or changes that you would like to bring forward. Have you all had a chance to see them?
Yes, sir.
I would entertain a motion to approve if there are any changes.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Cindy, and a second.
Second.
Judy, all those in favor of the motion to approve the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. And moving rapidly along, please turn to the financial report that was also given to you all. And the good thing is, this is a recap of the entire 2022 year versus most months we're looking at partial. So, Johnette, you want to interject any comments as we're looking at it? All pretty straightforward?
A few things came in over budget, but overall we came in under budget. We will need to designate the excess funds. I did want to see if we could, I had to order 6 new computers and a server that were, they were out of date. We got a email from our IT people, and we had some machines that were as old as 2018. So we replaced the ones that expired in 18 through 2021, which, like I said, is 6 machines, and plus the server expired last January. So if we replace that, the bid, or the estimate came in at $35,294.
Okay.
So then we can take that out of the 22 budget to get that paid for, or out of the excess funds.
Even though we had purchased those already?
Right. I mean, if you want to take it out of 23, I can.
I think it would be more proper
Okay.
if you all agree to, if it's a 23 approval and a 23 purchase, I would suggest we pay for it with 23 money.
Okay.
And you probably don't have that much money in there, but let's, I'll entertain y'all's thoughts as well.
We budgeted 4 new computers. We didn't budget enough because we spent, I think, $84,000 last year in computer service, and I budgeted 100. So it'll be about 20,000 short of what, or over what we budgeted.
Well, if your board approves a motion to purchase those, I would ask that it be a 23 item, and, I look at the 22 budget as, or the
Done.
22 year is done,
Okay.
and we'll move forward. If we have to finagle something as the year goes on, we'll do so.
Okay.
Would you all agree with that?
Yeah, and is this under the computer service?
Yes.
So do we rent these
No, we just
machines
put
or?
anything that any purchases of computers, any software maintenance, hardware maintenance, that all comes out of computer service.
So that's not just a service, that is computer-related expenses.
Okay. And are they special computers?
No.
Are they,
Is the server the big?
Yes, the
Part of
server's
that?
20,000.
Okay.
Yeah, it's 20,000 for the server itself. The machines are $1,000 a piece, the boxes, CPUs.
Does the purchase of the server also include funds for maintenance of it?
That's part of the annual maintenance that we have every year with the IT people. It
Okay.
just, the server that's in there will go out, and then the maintenance we were paying on that server will be replaced with maintenance on the new server.
Is there any other expense on the conversion, or that's part of the purchase?
That's all part of it. The 35,000 includes maintenance to install all the machines and the server.
And how long did the last server last? How often? Do something like
Let's
that.
see, when did we start with Harris? Was it 17? Yeah, so 5 years, 6 years.
Okay. In the life of a computer, that pretty much makes them obsolete, I would think.
As soon as you get them.
Yeah, it looks like they're showing the life of the CPUs to be 3 years now instead of 5.
That's crazy.
Because we bought computers in 21 and it says they expire in 24.
Well, it says they expire. I mean, are they?
Maintenance, I mean, it would be, I guess they're not covering our maintenance then. Anything that goes out, it'll be out of pocket. So we usually just, once they get to be that age, we replace them with new technology.
What else
Faster,
would you-
bigger. No.
Yeah. What do y'all do with your old ones? Like my computer's like 15 years old.
I can get you one cheap. It's 6 years old.
Right.
What else would you anticipate going forward with the expenditures that were budgeted?
The only other thing would be just maintenance that we
Okay.
have. And like I said, last year we spent 84,000 on, between Harris and BIS for maintenance.
Okay.
So in 2022, the computer service was budgeted at 85, and what do we do for?
We did
20
100 for this year because I thought that would be enough to cover new computers and.
Okay. And it looks like we spent 86, 619 of it. So, all right.
That is a legitimate question. What do we do with obsolete equipment? Do they take it? Is that
Some
part
of it
the-
they've taken, some of it we have some stored in the storeroom in here.
But there's no reason storing a bunch of old equipment, is there?
No.
What do you got?
Like I say, I don't know what to
I
do
don't
with it,
know,
yeah.
but
Get them to pay you something for it. That'd be great.
that's what I'm saying. If there's any kind of trade-in value or something, I mean,
I can ask them
Uh.
if they're,
if there's anything they can do, if not, whatever agencies like us do, let people bid on them or do something, but
Yeah.
I'm not a believer in letting them become 10 years old in a closet.
right,
So if
right.
they're worth
I know
$200 or
there's,
$500, I'd rather
Yeah.
somebody get some use out of them.
every once in a while, I mean, but it's just, I think the county kind of does the same thing we do, and then every so often they just get destroyed. They take them, because you can't just take it to the dump ground.
Hmm.
They won't take them, because we tried that and they won't take them. I'm not sure why. I don't know if it's what is in there,
Yeah.
but they will not take you
Well-
can't just like take them to the Honda dump and.
After the
city dump out there.
conversion, or during that, find out what our options are and bring
Okay.
that back to the board.
Okay.
If we put them out for bid for employees or for the public or whatever, that's better than putting them in a closet or waiting until they're all destroyed, I
Right.
think.
Okay.
Y'all have any other thoughts for that?
Well, if we're gonna get rid of them, just be sure you can wipe them.
And I
I'm-
think they
I'm
have,
presuming
even
that's
those
part
that
of
are
the
in
process.
storage, they wipe them.
Don't be like Hunter's laptop.
No, we do not want that.
Hopefully none of that. Whatever.
Any thoughts about the proposal that, don't know that it has to be at this point, we're talking financial report, but we do have a request for computers on the table. You want to finish the report and then come back to that?
Sure.
Okay. This completes last year's, and we've already approved next year's, and we haven't had any expenditures, so we don't really need to look at January.
Right.
So as we finish the year for the board, we will have our audit coming up probably in February.
February, March.
Yeah, so we do have our books fully audited and get a full audit report. But if you have any questions going into that audit, well, feel free to bring those up to Randall or Johnette at this time.
Well, if we don't allow for the use of last year's funds towards the purchase of this recent purchase, where's the money going to?
That's
Is
what
it-
y'all
The-
y'all have to designate that.
We will designate some of them. We could What is our excess amount?
It looks like 154,624.
You know, I think we could designate, what do you think we're gonna need at least? Maybe if we designated 28,000 for equipment and 130,000 for our building fund. I mean, that's what we've done before, that's how we have a building fund, it's rolling that money forward,
Right,
so.
no, I wouldn't mind doing that too. Go
Okay.
ahead and
Is that-
designate some funds from there and then the remainder towards the building. Is that what you're saying, right?
Yes, can I take that as a motion? And if so, it would presumably be to designate $28,207.51 towards equipment purchases and $130,000 to our building fund. Is that your motion?
Yes, my motion.
Okay. In a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Any concerns or questions about what we're doing with that?
What were the dollar amounts again?
28,207.51 for equipment and $130,000 even for the building fund. And then if we need it, we'll allocate that later because we
Okay.
have it reserved.
Okay.
That doesn't change your budget, it will be in
No,
the reserve
right,
account.
Right, okay, in reserve.
We're ready for a vote. Any other comments? All those in favor of the motion as presented?
Aye.
Alright.
Aye.
Thank you, that motion carries. We just have that reflected on our books.
Okay.
Okay, and we don't need to approve anything headed into the audit, or you want us to at least approve seeing the completed profit and loss for last year?
Yeah, that's fine, to approve the,
Okay. If you don't have any questions, of the 2022 profit and loss that you're looking at, I would entertain a motion to approve that, subject to the audit.
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the 2022 profit and loss.
And a second, please.
I'll second that.
All those in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Alright.
Aye.
That motion carries. Okay, I have asked Johnette, if you remember at the last meeting, to look into what options might be available to the appraisal district for the potential of acquiring property from the city of Hondo on the airbase. I guess they still call it the airbase
Yes.
property. And I think there's an email, but Johnette, I'll call on you to kind of tell us what you learned.
okay. I contacted Mr. Albert and he just asked me if I would send a map designating the locations we were interested in. So I sent him a map and it showed the original location that I had discussed with the previous city manager as the acreage that sits right behind the training center on Avenue, it's Avenue Y and Austin Avenue are where the property sits. And there's about I think it's 4 acres that sits back there. So I highlighted that, and then I also highlighted 2 locations off of Castro, which one is directly south of the Coors distributorship. The city owns 2 acres right there, right at the edge of there's an old Little League field in there, and so there's 2 acres that sits right on the corner. It's the corner of Castro and Harper that sits right there. And then I found another piece. I think it was directly across from the Rick Taylor Center on Castro also, and asked for those pieces. And
So Castro's the
the
main
main
street
street,
that runs
right,
north and
from
south.
90 to 462 there. And so then when he sent back, he said he was going to go to the council with it, and then he sent back an email stating that they had met and they discussed it, and that they were open to selling the property across from the Frio distributorship. It would possibly have to have a, what's the word I'm looking for?
Rezone.
Right, where they rezone it. variance, that's the word. We'd have to ask for a variance, and he said that, they were willing to possibly give a variance on that, if that's the piece that we, ended up negotiating and coming to a bid on. They did not mention anything about the one across from the Rick Taylor Center, so I'm assuming that one is off the table completely. And then he said that they would, also, consider
2 acres.
the 2 acres, I think it was, 2 acres out of the 4 acres behind the training center. So those are 2 sites that possibly we could look at further going on to purchasing. I mean, I don't know that we need actually 2 acres, it'd be just enough to where we'd have room if we had future expansion of it.
Municipalities and churches and things like that tend to like to be where there is extra parking so that other people can use our parking lot and we could use theirs during busy times. So I kind of like the idea of being closer to the training center if it would open up. If it's fenced off and you can't get to it, well, we wouldn't get that benefit. But
But I know when I talked to Mayor Danner about it previously, I know there's a certain amount that has been allotted for expansion of the training center also.
Mm-hmm.
So there would be a possibility that if the training center expands, it may expand into to where you could use some common parking. Because I don't think they can go, the only place they can go is north of where
Mhm.
they're at now if they go to expand it, because they've used everything where they put the Danner Annex and then the original training center.
on a tight budget, which we will certainly be on, I just hate to allocate a lot of our money for parking for
Right. Well, that's why I say only the 2
cars
acres.
when most
yeah.
of the time we need parking for 12, except
Right.
for 1 month out of the year. So I would like for the consideration to be to tag on somewhere where there's a parking lot that could be used during that month when we have our ARB
Oh, of
hearings.
their parking lot.
Yeah,
to
yeah.
Use theirs, gotcha.
And we'll make the same offer. You use ours when you need it, but I would hate for us to have to build parking for 40 or 50 parking places for 1
We
month
hope
use.
we don't ever need that many, right?
Well,
Yeah.
we have to assume that Medina County's going to grow, but at the
Right.
same time, even when you have meetings here, they use the Methodist Church
Right.
and the county
Well,
parking.
and a lot of our employees park across the street too.
Yeah. So anyway, just keep that in mind. How many parking our employees need, and approximately how many county residents would need when they come here to do business, because we can't short sale that in the
Right.
budget if we have to provide 100% of our own parking.
Right. Okay.
That's why I was hoping we could tag on with some other facility. There.
The other, the police department is it the police department is adjacent to it?
Yeah,
I think it's adjacent, but yeah, their part, it's quite a bit further over.
Okay. Well, as you're doing your fact finding, keep that in mind. That would help us a lot. And also, so they're
So
waiting
we're at
for
the
us.
point where they are willing to sell land. I guess the next, I just told them I'd bring that to y'all, and I know, I'm sure they'll have to have appraisals done before
Okay.
we even.
Will it be on a bid process, or it just they would agree to sell it at appraised value, or would you find out what the process is going to be?
I can find
Yeah.
out. The way it sounded, if they would get it appraised, we would pay them what it appraised out at. But I can find all
Can we
that.
appraise it?
Sure. Sure.
But anyway, I don't wish to get into them having it appraised and says it has to be this, and then open up to the public, and then we
Right.
have to outbid the public,
Right.
or we
right,
haven't
okay.
accomplished our task. So find out what that process will look like,
Okay.
and if we enter to an agreement, or at least a letter of intent, or something like that. And that's going to lead us to the next question. Have you been able to talk to any contractors to give us some estimates on what?
I got
4,000.
contact information. I haven't reached out to them yet, but I
Okay.
have gotten contact. I got contact information for 2E Fabricating. D. Evans has. He's been doing a lot of metal buildings, And then, which we talked about Griggs already, the only one I haven't gotten contact information on is Roy Lewis.
Okay.
So, but I have the others, I can reach out to them
Why
and
don't
I
you get,
kinda
like,
talked to Dee a little bit,
estimates or
but
something?
didn't
I
get
mean,
any numbers.
They can't bid something that we don't give them the specs.
Right,
But if they can give you any kind of proposal or recommendation, however they want to word it,
okay,
we need something to get us in the ballpark if we're gonna make this step, big step.
and, we're, size-wise, we were looking 4,000 to 5,000, is that correct, or we just go with 4,000, or how big a building do we think we need to go with?
What do you have here?
We've got
30.
3,500, is what we rent
And
from the
it's too
city
small.
right now, yeah, from the county right now, yeah.
Well, I don't see how 4 is.
4 is gonna be, okay, so we need to go closer to 5, and just,
Yeah, and
There's no sense in moving in a year and it's too little.
right.
no, I agree.
No, there's no sense in having 2,000 extra square feet either.
Right,
You know, so something 4,800, 5,000, and obviously the reason I think we are probably going to prefer the metal building is it's much more expandable than anything else.
right.
So we make sure that we have it designed, you know, for that purpose as well.
To where it
But,
can be added on to.
Yeah.
Okay.
mhm.
And I don't know on getting info from people. I've been hearing that nobody will give a bid right now.
Mm.
That it's going to be
Because
cost,
of the.
cost plus.
because of
Well, that's why I
material.
would like
It's,
maybe an estimate or a
okay.
suggestion
Yeah, I
or a
mean, they could give it-
recommendation or something, so we know how to budget and how to plan. But you're right. we
Yeah, I
may
heard
not-
just 3 weeks ago, one guy said, "I'll give you a bid if you tell me what you want and write me a check today so I can go buy the material."
No,
Yeah, they give you a budget number, but he's
Just,
fired out. What's your phone number?
I'll give it to you after the meeting.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
I don't need it out there.
Yeah, we don't need that all over.
I forgot. I was
Yeah, fair enough. I think that's good. Are there any
Good
other?
PR 549.
Yeah.
good catch.
Board, do y'all have misgivings on what direction we think we're going with this? You have other recommendations, other thoughts besides the airbase? Typically, the municipalities seem to be buying commercial property at the airbase cheaper than they can buy it in downtown Hondo, but we don't have to be in downtown Hondo either. Frankly, we just,
I don't have a problem. That's handy enough.
yeah, that's what I'm thinking too, but.
Well, it's one of those things, people are gonna find us. We don't have to be visible.
Yeah.
I mean, when they're looking for the appraisal district, they're,
Yeah.
Well, over the last 25 years, that airbase has kind of become part of the commercial, or at least the municipal part of Hondo.
right.
You know,
Yeah.
so.
Doesn't need to be at Yancey, but I don't, if it can be, if the land can be purchased less expensively than we could find something around here, then I think it's prudent.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter exactly where it doesn't need to be downtown.
Right.
Right.
You're
Well,
right.
and there's not much, I had looked when we first started doing this, and there's only maybe 2 or 3 little lots over, like behind Community Bank, in that area, old Community Bank, I guess you'd say, Texan Bank,
Okay.
whatever. But there's just not much vacant lots even in this downtown area, there's just nowhere to go. And then parking's the other issue too.
Mhm.
If you try to put anything down here, downtown.
Okay, well, by the time we meet next, hopefully,
I'll have some numbers.
yeah, hopefully you have quite a bit of information for us to have serious discussion on. If not, we don't meet every 2 weeks, obviously.
Right.
We don't want to meet every 2 weeks,
Right.
but before long you find out that half a year has come and gone and
Right, and then
we
we're
still
still
don't
trying
have
to figure out.
decisions. So please get some due diligence.
Okay, so I'll follow up with Mr. Albert then on the land situation to see what exactly our option will be if we do move forward with the lands there, if it's gonna go up for bid or if it'll be,
Okay.
uh,
And maybe even find out what was the last, I don't know what's the most recent thing they've done. It's been several years, I guess. But if he has,
The
and
last
I,
one that sold out there, 2 deals, he sold the 5-acre tract for
Right.
$150,000.
Right. And that was over
And
there
that's
behind James
directly
Avery.
behind the Frio distributorship.
Yeah, between it and, I guess, is it between it and
is
James
Jim
Avery?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Okay.
but that was probably
that was several years
2000,
ago.
maybe it might have been 5 years ago.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Okay. And you all are in the land business. If y'all know of something else that we should be, looking into, preferably in the city limits, but because for utility purposes.
Right.
But if there's something else that you all want to propose to us, well, we're all ears.
And that, so water, sewer, electric, everything is there, or handy there.
I would say it'd be
Yeah.
handy, probably not there, but it's probably handy.
And we'll find out from, that's part of the research, is if we
Right.
choose one location or another, is it at their expense, how close is it, or we, the user, won't have to pay to bring utilities? 'Cause
Okay.
location really matters if we're having to bring it.
I guarantee the city of Hondo ain't gonna pay for nothing.
Well, I'm hoping it's already there and we just pay connection
It
Right.
should
fees.
be, I
Yeah.
mean, with the college right there.
Yeah, it
Right,
should
within
be.
in the police department,
Yeah.
I would think they're.
Now, the other piece
Yeah.
across from Frio, you might have to go under the street.
Yeah, that one may be
Something like that.
totally undeveloped over there. And I'm a little bit more worried about flooding on that side.
I think that's about the only place in there that's buildable, I guess you'd
Yeah.
say, that's got a building site. I think that's why the city, because they consider that to be a prime piece of property on Castro.
Yeah, I'm looking at the flip plan. It does not go all the way to that property there, but
Okay. So,
It's more down closer to the railroad tracks, I think, is where the flooding comes in on that.
property right there.
Jody, if you know of anything else that you want to propose, they do some research on, location-wise,
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my
Okay.
head. I do not. so.
but if something comes to
Okay.
mind, please
Sure.
let them know that as well. Okay, any other comments or anything else we can do tonight regarding our wish for a building? If not, I'll move on down to item number 8, which is our Chief Appraiser's report.
This is the 25 corrections that have been made since the last meeting. There's only 95 of them. Most of them are just ownership changes.
Okay.
And then this week last week, we worked on clerical errors for the property value study. They sent the information for that, so we looked over it to make sure they had all our right information on their report. Once they've gotten that, they'll continue with their appraisals and get all their stuff together for the preliminary property value study that'll come out on January 31st. So then we'll find out on that if we're within the confidence interval on all the schools. So then once we get
This
that
is
done,
correct.
if we're out, then we'll have the time to appeal and that kind of stuff. We're also in the middle of the map review. They will come out the last week of this month to do the on-site visit. I've sent all the requested documentation that they have asked for, so that's all been sent. Once they've done the on-site inspection, then they'll let us know if we've passed everything that needed to be done for the map review.
For the record, since there are people watching, what
The map review is methods and assistance program, and that is, I guess basically our procedures to make sure that we're following the state
It's our state audit.
audit, more or
Okay.
less, right?
Okay. In layman's terms, that's what it
And
is.
it's hard to explain what it is in layman's terms.
Okay. Okay. But in
Basically,
the
it's a
business we're
I
in,
guess
when we
it
say
would be
map,
similar
people
to
think
a-
map.
Yeah, and I guess it would be
That's what I
similar
did.
to like a performance audit type thing, making sure that all of our procedures are being followed the way they're supposed to be according to state law.
Okay.
And then the property value study is basically that, just making sure that we have everything appraised within that 5%, 95% to 105% confidence interval of the market value.
Okay. It is my understanding that our Ag Advisory Committee has had their annual
Yes.
meeting and visited with you all.
Yes, they met right after y'all did last time, and they had asked if there was a possibility of increasing the minimum acreage size for ag, And their recommendation was to increase it to 20 acres.
From the
From
10,
the 10 to 20. And it's not gonna be necessarily on every piece of property. Some of the smaller tracts may qualify if it is being used to the intended, or the capacity it needs to be. I mean, they've got animals, that they're not overgrazing it, it's got enough grass to support the animals. We're not necessarily gonna go and yank everybody that's got less than 20 acres. We're not gonna yank their act.
I've been on this board, maybe you know better than me, but
Close to 10
10
years, I
years
think, yeah.
probably. This discussion has never been had for 10 years, so the 10-acre standard, I guess you would call it, in Medina County has lasted maybe for 20 or 30 years.
Right.
So tell me what the state requirement is, or the expectation for making that change.
It's basically up to our staff, to Chief Appraiser, to adopt the minimum acreage requirements on the advice of the Ag Advisory Board. And so then, he just said, when I contacted our attorney, that was what he said, that it was on the advice of the Ag Board that we could increase the minimum size.
And why?
They
What's the purpose?
are seeing that there's a lot of these 10-acre tracts that are being overgrown. The main thing is like, it's basically gonna be just more of the brush properties that cannot, because they can't support the animals, and everything's being overgrazed. It's not a pretty green hayfield.
Well,
And that was their,
there are no pretty green hayfields
Well, I know right now.
unless they're running water on them.
right.
So the other end of that is, you know, what if they can provide the feed necessary to run whatever animals they're running on that? I mean, do we have the power to tell them that they can't do that, or what?
Well, this has to do with tax evaluation. It doesn't have to do with zoning or land use. This, if there's a change, what the Ag Advisory Group apparently has suggested to Johnette is to change the standard in Medina County
Right.
to apply for agricultural ag evaluation. It would need to be, unless there's other circumstances that they can justify, that it would need to be on minimum 10-acre tracts. Whereas up till now, the policy has been 10, and so if somebody buys 11-acre tract, 1 acre for their own site, that leaves 10 that they can apply for agricultural evaluation.
Right.
We're not, we're not gonna see somebody denied being able to feed their horses or their animals of any sort.
Yeah.
But if this would be the policy, and from what we are being told, this board does not make this decision.
Right.
This is the state. I asked her to research this, and so that's why I'm asking her for the answer.
And I'm sorry, I cut you off on that. I
No,
apologize.
no,
So,
I-
but- so that, what
If they
is
get-
driving it exactly?
It's a lot of the stuff that's being overgrazed is what was brought up by one of the board members.
By one of the board members.
Mhm.
Okay.
And then they were all in agreement on it,
Yeah.
of that 20 acres.
And those are agricultural-minded people, farmers
Right,
and
and it's
ranchers that
farmers and
are on the
ranchers.
committee.
And
but-
like I said, we're not gonna go in and everybody that's in the county has less than 20 acres, we're not gonna yank. If it looks like they are still using it to the degree that it was previously, we're not gonna yank it. We're gonna and if they got a smaller operation or, smaller size and they can run an operation on it, we'll grant it. We do that now.
Right.
We go out there and look, and we've got 10 acres that people aren't using and they don't get ag on it just because they applied for it and own 10 acres, they don't get it. We go out there and make sure that they are using it to the degree that it needs to be used for the area, and then we'll grant it. If they're not, we'll deny it.
So
And
why
same
even
thing-
go through all the headache that's gonna ensue over this deal to change it to 20 acres? Because there's gonna be lawsuits flying out there. I mean, if you grandfather stuff in, well, so what happens to John, who owns 10 acres that he bought, with the assumption that he could easily maintain an ag exemption on there, and now he goes and turns around to sell it? Well, what happens? I mean, is
If that
it still stuck to that property, or does?
If that person can use it to the same degree he was, the next person will qualify.
So now the acreage requirement doesn't even matter.
And in actually, in all actuality, the code actually says there is not a minimum acreage in the code. The code says the land being used to the degree of intensity for the area.
Okay.
So up here, you got,
So
you can't, yeah.
So when
I mean,
10 or 20, it doesn't matter then.
It really doesn't. That's just up to the ag board, and they put that in place. Originally, 10 acres was put in place by the ag board back in 1990 when the ag board was formed.
Yeah.
They put the 10 acre minimum. And even at that point, less than 10 acres, if they were using it to the degree of the area, of intensity for the area, they would qualify for less than 10 acres.
Okay.
It's all going to based on use. Size does come into play. I mean, and it always has, especially with the brushy stuff. You know, you couldn't run anything when it's heavy brush. You can't run anything on 10 acres of heavy brush. So those definitely they did not qualify.
But if you call Bandera County,
Their
they'll say
minimum is
theirs
20.
is 20.
Their
So,
minimum is
so
20.
counties or districts do publish a minimum, a standard or an expectation, however you want to word it.
Right,
It's not going to be by action of this board apparently,
right.
but people will call and ask, what does it take in Bandera County or Medina County, because that's what matters to us.
Right.
So you all, under this, if this is the decision that you as a chief appraiser makes, you will announce that the standard in Medina County is 20 acres.
Right.
Is that correct?
Right,
And that people need to apply,
right.
whether they have more or less, they need to apply.
If they're
But the
using it, they
standard-
need to apply. If they're not using it, don't apply.
But you're gonna say the standard philosophy in Medina
Right.
County is 20 acres? Is that? I mean, I'm kind of like Jody and probably the rest of my board, if this is not a firm policy, I guess
It's
it
a
is.
guideline.
It's a guideline set by the county appraisal
An ag advisory board,
and ratified by the county chief appraiser, which
Right.
is you.
right.
Is this worthy of an announcement? Is this worthy of something? Is this on our website?
It's on the website.
So how is it worded on the website?
Well, it's on the guideline, in the guidelines. It's not like there's not an article out there.
I
on the
think there needs to
website.
be an article in the paper personally.
That the guidelines.
So, yeah.
Tim and I had discussed that.
And here's just my feeling, and I'm new here, obviously, but I didn't even know we had an ag advisory board. And number one, and number two, I couldn't tell you who's on there without asking you.
Right.
And I would be willing to, I would be willing to bet that there's a large part of our community that's probably in the same boat as me.
Right, yeah.
So whenever a decision like this flies out there, I think it, just as a common courtesy, I mean, I heard about it third party through a surveyor, okay? I didn't know anything about it. Well, that's something that we need to be able to speak intelligently to the public, because our names are out there. I mean, each one of us will catch flack over this, even though it's not our decision.
Right.
So, I mean, I would think, don't you think we should have been part of at least the preliminary conversation, or just a heads up, hey, this is what we're looking at, instead of just, flying it under the radar and you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah, the
So-
word's out there, because I've already been contacted by
And I
two
have two.
people that said don't.
So right or wrong, I mean, I'm not, I am into being a steward of the land, okay? I don't know, it might seem like an easy decision that, yeah, bumping it to 20 acres is gonna make everybody, not cut land up and or whatever the thought process is, but I think it has a potential to backfire, just from a real estate development standpoint, just at a glance, to where people are going to think, well, 10 acres, that's not going to get us our ag anymore.
Yeah.
Well, most people can't afford these 20 acres, so we're going to go for it. 1 acre, 2 acres, 3, whatever it is, And I just think there's a lot of thought that still needs to happen on this deal before we just go jerking the rug out from underneath. And
Well,
Yeah.
especially if this were a board decision, knowing my
Oh,
board, I think
yeah.
we would have discussion, and I think we would probably talk to people and look at the ramifications and the pros and the cons, and this board doesn't have the luxury to do that, nor the authority to do that.
Yeah.
So if this is something that this district is going to do, I would suggest that there be some timeline and some public notice. Maybe that's not the norm in the state of Texas under appraisal districts. Maybe you just change your website and down the road you go, but anytime you make changes that affect taxation and divisions of property and use of property, in
Land
valuation, land value of properties, you know, by the stroke of a pen or the thought of a committee, and then taking something like that into action is not the way this district, your board, would have handled it. This was news to me, and I've been on this board close to 10 years, and I did not know something like this was outside of our jurisdiction. So anyway, I would certainly at a minimum want the minutes to be explicit that this decision was not the authority of this board, not made by this board, not necessarily condoned by this board, and that we recommended that you all think it through and give some kind of timeline and notice to the public. Is that stated
fair enough.
correctly?
I mean,
Yes.
And is it something that the district feels like it needs to do?
It was just brought up by one of the board members and they discussed it at that point. I can bring them back and see if they want to reconsider it.
Well, so it says right here that it is the chief appraiser that has the authority to adopt minimum acreage requirements. I mean, the Ag Advisory Board, they just advise.
Advise.
They've
So-
already made their advice to you.
Right.
Yeah.
One of the board members was at a water board meeting in Galveston, Texas, and this was the big topic, was raising minimum acreages in the state of Texas. And apparently, a lot of the districts, they're doing it all across the state, is why this was brought to our attention. Because that was one of the big topics at that water board meeting.
I'd rather be last.
You know, I personally
Depends on what you're doing.
don't have a problem with this concept. I have a problem with the sudden change and the public not knowing. You know, in my mind, it takes a pretty special property to truly be agricultural use for 10 acres. You know, I think that's a very nominal amount. But anytime you make changes to policy and procedure, people notice and people will respond, and doing this, if this is what you choose to do short term with the authority that you have, I think it will certainly have some negative connotations and negative reaction, but I don't know that that will change too much if you give them 6 months notice.
Right.
But once again, if we don't have that authority, I guess you'll do what the state has authorized you to do. I would ask that that memo that came from our attorney be attached to the minutes
Okay.
for future. You know, if anybody, you know, once again, I don't know if there will be litigation. There will certainly be discussion and complaints. And anybody that wants to pull the
There-
records, they need to see that.
There's gonna be some fireworks.
Yeah.
I don't see how there won't be, you know.
Maybe the idea is to get feedback from the counties to their appraiser's office and see what kind of response there is. Should there be more of a negative response, maybe they were looking at, since it's already the new legislative session,
Right.
that they're pushing for new legislation
Yeah.
to make it to where it's a mandate now versus just a guide.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I may be wrong.
The email you received from the attorney said, if you do adopt, and I'm saying this for the record.
Right.
If you do adopt minimum acreage, make sure you have some data as to why you selected this specific acreage for specific land types and animal units. So I would think you ought to paper your trail, paper this, find out what some of the other counties have done when they made their change or whatever. But, you know, until probably 15 days ago, this board didn't even know this discussion was being had. And so whatever action you all take with your authority, I think you just need to be prepared to justify it and to defend it.
Well, and I know Cindy has talked to Soil Conservation Office,
Cindy,
the ag
oh,
appraiser.
you're, okay, I'm sorry.
My ag appraiser has
Okay.
talked to Soil Conservation Office and, what's the other office?
USDA.
The SDA office. And they kind of are on the same page we are as far as that goes, on the size and everything, the overgrazing of the land and so forth.
You can overgraze 1,000 acres.
Yep.
So, I mean, the land, it's got to have something to do with the animal units on it, you know. I wouldn't let overgrazing be your number one criteria for, you know, there's probably a better argument if you want to get it done, but
Well, either way, I think you've heard from your board, and we're not pleased with the process that which, you know, we just never knew this was even in the works. We didn't know that this was outside the authority of this board, so I guess I'm disappointed that we didn't know what the state law mandated. So anyway, we as a board don't have anything else to say other than we've been heard, and the record states that we recommend that you be ready to defend any action that you take to the public. And I guess we're recommending that you put a news release out stating what the procedure, policy, or the standard is going to be, and maybe try to justify it.
Question, can all of this information be put out this year and a change not take place until effective next year?
Clay, unfortunately, that's a good question, but it's outside of our authority.
No, but I'm asking.
Right. We can, I mean, yeah, that is something to consider to,
I would get people ready, because people that may be selling land, that gives them time to prepare
right?
instead of just changing like that. And
But
I
keep in
agree
mind-
wholeheartedly with what Jody said on the overgrazing, because I've been on 40,000 acre pieces of ranch that were overgrazed. There was no grass.
Right.
But keep in mind, just for the public, there is no grandfathering of agriculture. So
But I see what you're saying.
for decisions, somebody may get it now and then they won't qualify later. You know, they're not going to necessarily grandfather it. If they can't justify it 2 years from now, they're not going to get the renewal of it.
Yeah, I hear you there, but I'm talking about just get people ready. i.e., these are the counties that have already done this. The
Right.
state legislature is guidelining us
Right.
towards this rather than we just
Here it
raised
is
it.
and, right, okay.
Because here's what I know. Whoever it is that's on this ag advisory board, they ain't gonna be getting the calls.
no.
Because you've already been getting them. Yeah.
And I'm, you know, if it's the way things are going, then I don't disagree that
Right.
Medina County needs to go that way too. This just seems sudden to me, and the only feedback that I've gotten has been, no, don't do it.
Done.
So,
That's the feedback I've gotten too, but
And I do appreciate that y'all, if somebody's got a legit, whatever it is, truck farm garden on
Right,
5 acres, that's a big garden. You can grow a lot of
Right.
stuff there.
right,
And I understand, too, if it's just your great big yard,
right.
that there's a difference there. But anyway, okay.
Well, I think that's part of the problem is there's more of those 10-acre tracts. It's just a big yard or a playground and not an ag operation.
Yeah.
There's more of those out there than there are actual ag operations
Right.
on 10 acres.
Well, and that's
Because
really,
you just can't do it.
that's the real problem with the state of Texas. The legislature has not given proper guidelines. Are you really an ag operator? Do you file a Schedule F with your tax return?
Right.
What makes somebody an ag operator and justified in getting a tax break?
Well, and that's the
Or
thing,
not.
it's gotten away from what it was put in place for. It was put in place to help the farmer and rancher. And there's people now, they think they can throw one cow on there and get cheap tax in there, that's an ag operation. Well, it's not an ag operation. They got their pet cow out there and they don't understand what an ag operation should be. And that's what part of it is too, is you've got these people that aren't true operations that are out there and they're doing all this just for cheap taxes. Not
Sure.
for the
Yeah.
purpose that it was
But
put
the
in place for.
perception is being that was okay.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. It's,
And
There was for so long, there's so many people that they were under the impression that all they had to do was fill out a form and they got to ag. Because they own 10 acres and they filled out this piece of paper, they get ag, but that's not how it works.
Yeah. But
Oh,
the
well.
educating
yeah, there's an education
them on that
process that
before
needs to
the axe falls, I think would be beneficial to everybody involved.
One other question: are y'all planning on doing anything to change acreage requirements for like wildlife or any of the other stuff, or is it
No,
just ag?
that's still 50 acres. That was put in place by the board of directors. The wildlife minimum acres was put in place by the board of directors. When that was put out, that went to the board of directors.
because that was a new state policy.
Right, because,
at the
and that
time.
was back in 1995.
Yeah.
When the wildlife came into play. And that is based on location. The state broke down by the regions and you had to have, I can't remember the percentage of it, but it came out to 50 acres for Medina County. For the the wildlife.
Johnette, do you have any idea what was the timeline for trying to put this in place? Before this discussion?
Well, the deadline to apply for ag is April 30th.
Okay.
So they got.
So they were looking at it for 23 tax
For
year
4
basically.
months.
Yeah, too fast.
Okay. Well, we could talk for an hour, but we're not gonna take any action.
Yeah, all right.
Okay. What else
I don't
needs to
have
be in
anything
your
else
report?
on my report that was it.
Anybody have any questions for our chief appraiser? Or Randall, her assistant? None? Okay, we don't have any matters for executive session, so we will not need to take part in that. And I would call your attention to item number 11 that states our next meeting would be March 14th at 6 o'clock. So please mark your calendars for that. If we are moving rapidly along with the land issues and we need to have another meeting, we certainly have the authority to
Right.
call a February meeting, even if it's just for one item.
Okay.
So keep in mind when we only meet every other month, 12 months passes pretty fast.
Right.
So
Right.
if you have something and you can let me know what's going on, where we are, and if I deem necessary, we'll call another meeting
Okay.
before March 14th.
Okay.
With that, I would call for a motion to adjourn this meeting.
I so move.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Okay.
Motion carries, and our meeting is, we'll call it 7 o'clock.